All right, welcome back to The Real Story. I want to bring in our second guest. He is the president of the Connecticut State Colleges and University System, President Mark Ojakian. Mark, it's always great to talk to you. Thanks for joining us on The Real Story.
Thank you for having me.
So, Mark, you decided to retire at the end of this year. You took this post back in 2015 following years of public service to the state, including as the chief of staff for Governor Malloy. Tell me why now? What went into making this decision and the timing of it?
Well, if you remember back in 2015, I was asked to take the position of president for 2 years, and it's been 5. I believe after 41 years in state public service, that I've done probably as much as I set out to do and could do in the future. And so I think it's time to pass the torch on to a younger generation and let them lead the effort moving forward.
Governor Lamont was one of many state officials who had some complimentary words for you. He said you've brought, quote, stability to a system that was in turmoil. So, I mean, what do you consider to be your biggest accomplishment in this role?
I think that's one of the main accomplishments is what the governor referenced. After many years of sort of turbulence within the system, the board was looking for somebody that could bring some sense of stability and also be a change agent for initiatives that needed to happen to be able to improve the educational quality of services that we provide to our students. And I think, as you saw the day I announced my retirement, both sides of the political aisle had very complimentary things to say about me. I was very humbled by what they put out in the press. So I believe I was able to bring some stability to move forward some initiatives like the consolidation of the community colleges, which will improve student success in the future, which will reduce the equity gap and fundamentally put our system on a much more financially sustainable path into the future.
Yeah, and you kind of rolled into my next question, but that's okay. That means we're on the same train of thought. Talk a little bit about that, though. Why consolidating those colleges, 12 community colleges into one? Why is that the right decision, and isn't that going to mean layoffs, though?
I think a couple of points I'd like to make. First of all, it's the right decision for those reasons I just stated. We have very poor student success rates in our community colleges, especially among students of color. We have an equity gap that exists between white and non-white students by any metrics that you would look at. And thirdly, we are in a very precarious financial situation, pre-COVID, but more importantly, post-COVID. And so we need to do a better job of providing the quality education that we do provide now to as many students as we can, and do more to improve the services that are available and the success rates that we see of our students of color. We have built a great momentum moving forward, had a great meeting with our accreditors in June, and I think with the naming of the new Connecticut State Community College and the appointment of the senior leadership team, that college is poised to move forward and be accredited in the very near future to begin in 2023 offering courses to a new class of students.
Okay. Mark, I don't have to tell you about the recent racial strife in our country with many young college-aged people leading a movement for change and equality. The Students First initiative, which you mentioned earlier, seeks to improve outcomes for minority students. What headways have you made, and do you see this as sort of unfinished business and something the next president is going to need to work on?
Well, I think what we've tried to do over the past 5 years under my leadership is make sure that we celebrate the diversity in our system and that we talk about the hard issues that need to be talked about. When we talk about the fact that students who are Black and Latinx are suffering in terms of their success rates, we're not doing it to make people feel bad, but we're doing it because we need to take action in those specific areas. I just announced this week that we are forming a task force to take a look at what curriculum we offer at our 2-year and 4-year institutions around criminal justice and criminal justice reform. So we're able to provide the best training and best educational components to future law enforcement officers. And then finally, we've done a great job of providing services to incarcerated individuals under our Second Chance Pell program. One of the most inspiring graduations I have ever been to has been in a prison, where we provide a manufacturing certificate to an incarcerated person who's about to get out of prison and start a new life. So we've done a lot, but we still have a lot to do.
Mark, we just recently learned that there was a COVID outbreak among some football players at UConn. There's football, different athletics and sports programs across your more than a dozen campuses. I mean, does that give you any pause when it comes to proceeding in the fall with athletics?
Well, I believe, if I'm correct, that all of the conferences that my institutions compete in have canceled fall sports. So we are not going to be having the same sort of issue in the fall that the University of Connecticut and other institutions have. That's not to say that there isn't a certain level of anxiety about starting up again in a couple of weeks. Students are now starting to repopulate our campuses, but I believe, because of the leadership the governor has shown in opening up the state in a very thoughtful, strategic way based on public health guidance, that we are going to be in the best position possible to welcome the students back and to have a full semester through the Thanksgiving break.
Yeah, because we've seen the big parties, too, though, across the country. I mean, despite, the best laid plans, we've seen the University of North Carolina end in-person classes, COVID clusters in Kansas, Oklahoma State, Notre Dame. What specifically makes you think that we can do it safely here in Connecticut?
Well, I think here in Connecticut, first of all, we have one of the lowest positivity rates in the nation, and that's a great testament to the work of Governor Lamont and his team. Secondly, all of our campuses have been following the public health guidance in terms of physical distancing, cleaning protocols, wearing of masks everywhere you go, and residential hall sort of guidance on how many students can be in a pod, and then how many visitors is everybody allowed. The second thing we've done is we've begun a very aggressive marketing campaign a couple of weeks ago through social media to remind students of what their social responsibility is to themselves and to their communities. And if they're going to be congregating, then they need to follow the guidance that the governor has put out there. So do it safely. Do it outside mostly if you can. Do it with the limitations on attendance that the governor has put out. And then finally, you have the carrot and you have the stick. If you don't abide by those rules and you have an off-campus party, for example, which has 100 to 200 people inside of a dwelling, then there's going to be discipline. So we're hoping students heed this message and understand that they have a responsibility not only to themselves and their institution, but the community, the greater community within which the campus is housed.
Because if we slide backward, we know that there's consequences for that, too. Some of them are, emotional and social, and others are financial. I think it was you who said that we would stand to lose more than $100 million if there was no fall semester. Am I right on that?
That's correct, because the fact of the matter is we derive a great deal of revenue by room and board that is assessed on students. And if we have to pivot, as we did in the spring, we had to refund $25 million for a very short period of time. This would be financially unsustainable if that were to happen. Right. But the most important thing that we are concerned about is the health and safety of the campus community. And that is what we are focused on. And if everybody follows the guidelines we have set out that are guided by public health experts in collaboration with some of the best and brightest public health officials in the state of Connecticut, then I think we will be on the right path to a very promising semester.
Mark, however you want to frame this, I guess some people would call it a regret. Some people would call it unfinished business, a do-over. Do you have anything you wish you could do over, any unfinished business that you're leaving on the table as you leave this position?
No, I believe that the system is perfectly poised to move forward. I believe the initiatives are in great shape. I've often said that the sign of a strong leader is assembling a team around them that can function without that leader in place. I believe we have a strong team on the campuses, at the system, a very dedicated and hardworking board of regents. And if it was one person that kept a system or an institution or an organization moving forward, then you would have failed as a leader. So I believe we have the team in place to move this forward.
All right, Mark Ojakian, the president of the Connecticut State Colleges and Universities System. Mark, it's always great to talk to you. Thanks for joining us, and congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, and thank you for joining us on this edition of The Real Story. We'll see you next weekend. Be sure to tune in to the Fox 61 News tonight, starting at 10.